Good morning. So today I am tasting a mangrove honey from Saudi Arabia. And on the photograph that was on the calendar for this event, you can see me with the beekeeper. Now, there's two sisters, and their father was a beekeeper for many, many years, and they have now taken on the beekeeping. And they've won awards for the honey, and it's mangrove honey from the eastern province of Saudi Arabia. So they're just away from Riyadh. So this is the label. So if anyone can read that, and there's the phone number as well, so you can contact them. And I was able to pour this honey myself, bottle it. They had a machine and you could pour your own honey out. So this is my very own sample. And when I tasted it, I was really blown away. And what's unusual is this combination of flavors that you get with mangrove honey. And it's becoming very popular in Saudi Arabia. Now, mine has crystallized because it's been stored in colder temperature, but not many honeys in Saudi actually crystallize. So culturally, they look at a crystallized honey as if it's not real, it's gone off. Whereas in the UK, well, maybe we're the same, but we do get used to our honeys crystallizing because they will crystallize in colder temperatures. So here you go. This is the color of it crystallized. Now, when you take the lid off and you first smell it, it is really quite floral. And so I'm going to dig in. And I just know when I tasted it, I was so blown away. I tasted so many honeys in Saudi Arabia, and there was just a handful. There was the Chinese ones, this one, and a couple of others that really, impressed me. But so flavors do change a little bit as the honey crystallizes, but also as the honey ages, like wines, it will develop, it will change. So it does sort of stick together, which may sound a crazy thing, but just like one of the other honeys I was tasting, where you have this sort of, I suppose perhaps it's the fats, it's the oils in it. It doesn't just dissolve straight away in water in your mouth. It doesn't just suddenly dissipate. It stays, it sticks. And it's quite like a eucalyptus honey. And you have this burnt sugar, toffee, caramel kind of aroma. But then you mix that with this real floral, and then there is quite a sweetness. So you get the burning of the sweetness. So it's really a very interesting honey because it is like boiled sweets. You do have the caramel, but then you've got the aromas of floral honey. Really, really gorgeous. And it was just so nice meeting these two young girls who are just passionate about honey and beekeeping, and they have won loads of awards for their honey. So it's really exciting to see women. Of course, we don't hear so many good things in the West about what's happening with women in Saudi Arabia. And yet my experience with the women I met, there was lots of women scientists who've been paid by the government to take their families, all their families, their husbands, their children, and go and live in countries all around the world to study, to do their PhDs. So I met a lot of very empowered, very strong women. These two girls, they were making their honey, they were running their own business. Their father was also the beekeeper, so he has a beekeeping equipment business, which obviously works quite well together. But these girls are making their own honey. And I find that so interesting that more and more women are becoming recognized in their beekeeping and the difference that makes with keeping bees. Now, related to this, I met a Brazilian beekeeping expert, I mean, a real expert in honey production. And he's working in the UAE, and he's been there for a number of years now. And he's been setting up projects to train beekeeping with all kinds of different groups of people. And he found that the women's beekeeping groups are doing really well, and their bees are doing really well. They're producing lots of honey. It's all working really well. And we were having this great conversation because what is it about women in beekeeping? And he was saying to me, so this is a man who is older than me, probably mid 60s. He's had 40 plus years experience in beekeeping all around the world. And he is saying that women are doing better at beekeeping. And his reasons were that when he taught a group of men, they all liked to think they already knew what they were doing. And so he would tell them what to do, and they would go off and do what they wanted to do. And then things would go wrong. The bees would die, the bees would get sick, they wouldn't get as much honey, they'd lose swarms, all this kind of thing. Whereas the women, whether they had done beekeeping before or not, they listened. They listened to the instructions and they learned from it. And so he found that they grew and their colonies grew really quickly because they were open to ideas, they were open to instruction, and on top of this, they were teaching him because they were listening to the bees. They were coming up with new ideas and going, well, how about if we do this? Or what about that? And he found that really interesting because before he'd been always teaching men and just finding they don't listen, and then you have to go in and sort out any problems. So he was saying in the UAE, the beekeeping women's groups were just phenomenal. So this little tasting today is really all about women in beekeeping and highlighting how there are women in beekeeping doing really well, running their own businesses in countries that we're told they can't or they don't. And this is a young girl, I mean, under 20, I would say, who is making this honey. She's been on the social media, she's been on the news, she's won awards, global awards. So really, really a great, great honey producer. So there we go. And tasting profiles. See, it's really is floral, but mixed with caramel. Really interesting. Now, the other thing I want to talk about was mangroves. So I had always pictured mangroves as you see on films in, say, Florida, where you've got the sort of flooded areas and you have these trees with really big roots that are coming out of the water and they're in the water. And that's how I always thought of mangroves. And I'd never really looked at the leaves or thought about that. Well, when we were on Cocos, there were hedges between the lawns of the house and then the sea, the lagoon and the sea. And these hedges were these sort of quite prickly bushes with tiny little leaves, and they either had yellow or white flowers. And I was really interested to know what they were. And that was where I was first looking for bees, because I thought if I look at the flowers and I'll see the bees. And I didn't see any bees on those flowers for months. And it turned out they were mangrove. They're a type of mangrove and it's called pemphis. And it has to be pollinated by bees. So it means that bees had been on the islands, were on the islands somewhere. And that was what was, keeping the pemphis plants growing. But between 2020 and when we got back there in 24 on Cocos Keeling Island, what had happened was the council or the of the islands were propagating plants to try and sort of regenerate growth around the islands of different plants, and all the native species, and they were really having a problem with the pemphis. Now, I think that's because they weren't having bees. The bees had gone. So when the bees came back, and we've now got a lot of bees there, you can see the pemphis really flowering. You can see the bees on it. And it took me 8 months to get my favourite photograph, which is a bee on the pemphis or flying to the pemphis with the beautiful colours of the lagoon behind. So being on Cocos, after I'd gone to Saudi Arabia and heard about the mangrove honey, it gave me a new insight into what mangrove plants may look like. And actually, if you look online and you see what Saudi Arabia are doing, they have this massive mangrove planting project to help protect the coastlines. And the plants look very similar to the pemphis, but I haven't been able to find the species. It's it's a bit difficult. The news goes different ways, but there we go. So this is mangrove honey from Saudi Arabia. So if you visit the Arabian Peninsula and you get offered mangrove honey, say yes, because it's really good. And We know that the mangroves are protecting the coastline, and that's what we want. We want plants, native plants that protect the coastline that actually can feed our pollinators. That's what will be good all round. And I'm just going to point out this lovely um, print, or it's a like tin print. I got this. We're in Stroud at the moment, and there was a market last night, and there was a lady, and she had this. And so it's from a William Morris print, but with a bumblebee. And actually, if you look at that little gap there, it's actually a broken belted bumblebee, which is quite rare now. So really, really exciting to see this bee and on this fabric. And now I want to know, is this fabric still available? Because gosh, if I was ever going to have wallpaper or curtains, this is the fabric I should have. So I wanted to put it up in the background so I can share it with you all. So there we go. So a really lovely bee themed start to the weekend. And until tomorrow, just enjoy your weekend and enjoy any honey that you're tasting today. Thanks very much. Bye.